Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Of all the things you think you'll feel after winning the lottery, waking up in your ex-girlfriend's body isn't one of them. You picture champagne, fast cars, maybe an ill-advised trip to Vegas. You don't picture the scent of lavender and vanilla, or the unfamiliar weight of long hair spilling across a silk pillowcase. You certainly don't picture the gentle, persistent pressure on your own chest, a softness that feels both alien and alarmingly attached to you. That was the first thing that broke through the fog of my champagne-soaked hangover. Not the headache, not the dry mouth, but the hair. It was tickling my neck, a fine silken curtain that shifted every time I breathed. My hair was short, buzz cut on the sides, a little longer on top. It had been that way since I was 16. This was something else entirely. I tried to groan, to roll over and bury my face in the pillow, but the sound that escaped my lips wasn't my own. It was a soft, breathy sigh, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times before, usually whispered in my ear. My eyes snapped open. The room wasn't mine. My apartment was a testament to bachelorhood gray walls, a black leather couch, and a collection of video game posters I'd never bothered to frame. This place was pink, a soft, dusty rose. To be exact, the duvet cover was white and fluffy, like a cloud, and the curtains were sheer, letting in a gentle morning light that made the whole room glow. A vanity table stood in the corner, a chaotic but beautiful mess of brushes, bottles, and shimmering powders. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, panicked rhythm. This wasn't my apartment. This wasn't my bed. And this wasn't my body. With a surge of adrenaline, I threw back the covers. I was wearing a thin, silky nightgown, the color of champagne. It clung to a figure that was all soft curves and smooth lines. My legs were long and slender, completely hairless. My hands, when I held them up in the dim light, were delicate, with long fingers and perfectly manicured nails painted a pale, shimmering pink. "No," I whispered, and that voice, that damn musical voice, echoed back at me, "No, no, no." I scrambled out of bed, my movements clumsy and uncoordinated. My center of gravity was all wrong. I felt top-heavy, and my hips seemed to sway with a mind of their own. I stumbled toward a full-length mirror hanging on the back of the bedroom door, my breath catching in my throat. I braced myself. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the fall would destroy you, but needing to look down anyway. Staring back at me was Lily, my ex-girlfriend, the woman I'd broken up with 6 months ago, the woman whose face was a perfect heart shape, with wide, expressive blue eyes, a small, upturned nose, and lips that were naturally full and pink. Her long, honey blonde hair was a messy halo around her head, and her body, clad in that flimsy nightgown, was the kind of figure that made men stop and stare. It was also, apparently, my body now. "No way," I breathed, the words barely a whisper. "These can't be real." My hand, her hand, our hand, rose shakily. I watched in the mirror as the slender fingers touched the soft cheek. The skin was like velvet, impossibly smooth. I traced the line of the jaw, the curve of the lips. I felt the sensation on my fingertips and on my face simultaneously, a bizarre feedback loop that made my stomach churn. I opened my mouth, and the reflection did the same. I tried to shout, to scream, to make any kind of sound that felt like me, like Jake, but all that came out was a high, panicked squeak. The vocal cords felt tight, unfamiliar. The very air in my lungs seemed different, lighter. My eyes fell to the chest, to the 2 soft, round mounds of flesh that rose and fell with each terrified breath. Hesitantly, my hands moved down, cupping them through the thin silk of the nightgown. They were soft, heavy, and undeniably real. A wave of vertigo washed over me, and I had to grip the doorframe to keep from collapsing. This wasn't a dream. This was real. This was happening. My frantic gaze swept the room, searching for an answer, for anything that could explain this nightmare. And then I saw it, on the pristine white bedside table, next to a half-empty glass of water and a romance novel, was a single folded piece of paper. My name, or what used to be my name, was written on the front in Lily's elegant looping cursive. Jake. With trembling fingers, I snatched it up and unfolded it. The message was short, simple, and utterly devastating. Hi, Jake. Enjoy your new body. Don't worry, it'll only last until midnight. Oh, and one more thing. Try not to get too comfortable. Lily. A lipstick print, a perfect mocking crimson kiss, was stamped at the bottom. The rage that boiled up inside me was pure, unfiltered Jake, but the body it was boiling in didn't know how to handle it. Instead of a roar, a choked sob escaped my lips. Instead of a clenched fist, my hand just trembled, crumpling the note into a tight ball. She had done this. Lily had done this to me, and I had a sinking feeling I knew why. The lottery. The $14 million that was now, officially, sitting in my bank account, or, more accurately, the bank account belonging to the body she was currently occupying. Panic is a cold, sharp thing. It cuts through confusion and leaves you with a single, desperate need to do something. My first instinct was to find a phone. My phone, the one that was probably in the pocket of my jeans, which were probably lying on the floor of my apartment, currently being worn by her. I scanned the room again. Lily's phone, a sleek rose gold iPhone, was sitting on the vanity. I snatched it up, my fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar size and shape. My thumbprint didn't work. Of course, I tried to remember her passcode. Was it her birthday? No. Our anniversary? We didn't have one anymore. Then it hit me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She always complained about security but could never be bothered to remember a complex password. The screen unlocked. My heart pounded as I went to my own contact. The picture I'd set for myself grinned back at me, a goofy selfie from a baseball game last year. Seeing my own face, my square jaw and easy smile, felt like looking at a ghost. I pressed the call button, my breath held tight in my chest. It rang once, twice. Hello? The voice that answered was mine. Deep, a little gravelly in the morning, and utterly, horribly familiar. It was the voice I used to order coffee, to talk to my mom, to cheer for the Yankees, and hearing it come from someone else, from her, made my blood run cold. What did you do to me? Lily, I shrieked. The sound was thin and reedy. A woman's voice pitched high with hysteria. It didn't sound threatening. It sounded pathetic. There was a low chuckle on the other end of the line. My chuckle. Calm down, Jake. Or should I say, Lily, you sound stressed. You should try some chamomile tea. You've got some in the kitchen. The casual, condescending tone was infuriating. You look gorgeous. By the way, I just checked myself out in your bathroom mirror. Not bad at all. Change me back now, I yelled, pacing the small bedroom, my bare feet padded softly on the plush rug. Each step felt strange, the subtle swing of my new hips a constant, unwelcome reminder of my situation. I can't, she said, her voice my voice oozing false sincerity. Not until midnight. At least that's how the spell works. Don't worry, the day will fly by. Spell? What are you talking about? Are you insane? My grandmother was eclectic, she said, a hint of amusement in her tone. She left me a few of her old books. Turns out they're more than just leather and dust. I found a lovely little corporeal transference incantation. It was surprisingly easy. The pieces clicked into place, each one more horrifying than the last. The money, I whispered, sinking onto the edge of the bed. You're after the lottery money. $14 million. Jake, she said, and I could practically hear the smug grin spreading across my own face. You really didn't think I'd just let you walk away with all that after how you ended things, did you? I'm going to spend the day at the bank. Turns out, they're much more accommodating when you're the actual account holder. I'll be transferring every last cent into a new account, an account under the name Lily Myers. Rage, white-hot and absolute, surged through me. You bitch, I screamed. I slammed my fist down on the bedside table. But it wasn't my fist. It was a smaller, more delicate hand. There was no satisfying crack of knuckles against wood, just a dull, aching throb in my slender wrist and a sound that was more of a pat than a punch. The gesture was impotent, weak. The physical expression of my anger was completely neutered. It was the most frustrating, emasculating feeling I'd ever experienced. Lily laughed on the other end. My laugh. A deep, hearty sound. Careful there, sweetheart. You don't want to break a nail. Look, I've got to go. Big day ahead. Try to have some fun. Experience life from the other side. Who knows? You might like it. Lily, don't you dare hang up, Lily. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my whole body trembling. She was going to steal my money, my future, everything I had dreamed of for the past 48 hours. Gone. And I was trapped in this soft, fragrant, delicate prison of a body. The anger began to curdle into a thick, suffocating despair. I felt utterly powerless. Every instinct I had to fight, to intimidate, to use my physical presence to command a situation was gone. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of the phone. Lily's wide, terrified blue eyes stared back. My fear looked beautiful on her face. The thought was so twisted it made me want to be sick. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air filled a smaller set of lungs. My shoulders, narrow and graceful, shook with the force of my anxiety. I was trapped, yes, but the day wasn't over. Midnight felt like a lifetime away. But it was an endgame. I just had to survive until then. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to stop her. First things first, I had to get dressed. The thought alone sent a wave of fresh horror through me. The closet was a world unto itself. When I slid the mirrored door open, I was assaulted by a riot of color and texture, unlike my own wardrobe, which consisted of about 4 different shades of gray, black and blue. This was an explosion of life. There were soft cashmere sweaters, floral sundresses, crisp business blouses, and at least a dozen pairs of jeans in every cut imaginable: skinny, boot cut, boyfriend, high-waisted. The sheer volume was overwhelming, but it was the other side of the closet that truly made my stomach clench. Hanging on a series of hooks was a collection of lingerie that looked more like decorative spiderwebs than functional clothing. Lace, silk, satin, in colors from innocent white to scandalous black and crimson. My brain screamed at me to just grab the plainest t-shirt and jeans I could find, to cover up this foreign body as much as possible and pretend none of this was happening. But a strange, insidious curiosity began to bubble up from beneath the panic. It was the same morbid curiosity that makes you slow down to look at a car crash. I was in her body. I was living, for one day, behind her eyes. What did it actually feel like? The thought was shameful, a betrayal of my own identity, but it was also powerful. Lily had stolen my power, my voice, my strength. Maybe understanding this, was a way of taking some of it back. I started with the basics. My hands, feeling clumsy and large, pulled open a drawer. It was filled with neatly folded pairs of panties and bras. I picked up a simple-looking bra, made of soft, pale blue lace. It felt like nothing in my hands, a delicate, flimsy contraption of straps and fabric. Putting it on was a logistical nightmare. I fumbled with the straps, trying to get them over my shoulders. The cups felt strange and empty until I adjusted myself, a process that made my cheeks burn with a deep crimson blush. The most difficult part was the clasp in the back. My arms didn't want to bend that way. I twisted and contorted, my breath coming in short, frustrated huffs, until I finally heard the faint click of the hooks catching. The sensation was immediate and bizarre. It was a constant, gentle pressure, a feeling of being held and supported in a way I'd never imagined. It wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly. It was just there, a constant reminder of the anatomy I was now sporting. I then slipped on a matching pair of lace panties. The fabric was so light and soft against my skin it was barely noticeable, a stark contrast to the familiar, sturdy cotton of my own boxers. I stood in front of the mirror, wearing nothing but her underwear. The sight was jarring. The body staring back at me was undeniably beautiful. Slender waist, flaring hips, long legs. The blue lace contrasted prettily with the pale, smooth skin. For a moment, I wasn't Jake trapped in a nightmare. I was just a man looking at a very attractive woman, and a flicker of detached appreciation went through me. Then I remembered that this woman was me, and the vertigo returned with a vengeance. Get a grip, man, I muttered to myself, but the soft, feminine voice only made it worse. I needed clothes, real clothes. I ignored the dresses, the skirts, anything that felt too extreme. I grabbed a pair of dark, tight-fitting skinny jeans and a simple, white V-neck t-shirt. Pulling on the jeans was another new experience. They were snug, designed to hug every curve. I had to wriggle to get them over my hips, the denim stretching taut. When I finally got them buttoned, the feeling was constricting, yet oddly secure. They changed the way I stood, forcing my posture to shift, my back to arch slightly. The t-shirt was soft and lightweight. It draped over my new chest, clinging just enough to hint at the shape beneath without being overt. I looked in the mirror again, dressed in simple, casual clothes. I looked normal, like any other young woman you might see walking down the street. It was almost more disturbing than the lingerie. This felt plausible. This felt real. My hair was a tangled mess. I found a brush on the vanity and hesitantly began to work it through the long, blonde strands. It was a slow, surprisingly soothing process. The bristles scraped gently against my scalp as I worked out the knots. The sheer length of it was incredible. When I was done, it fell in a shimmering curtain past my shoulders. I felt the weight of it, the way it moved when I turned my head. It was like having a new limb, without thinking. I gathered it all up and pulled it over one shoulder, a gesture I had seen Lily do 1,000,000 times. It felt bizarrely natural. As I stood there, staring at the woman in the mirror, a profound sense of dislocation washed over me. The anger and panic were still there, simmering beneath the surface. But now they were joined by something else, a deep, unsettling confusion about who I was. I looked like Lily. I sounded like Lily. I was wearing her clothes, her skin, but inside, I was still Jake. Wasn't I? The reflection in the mirror offered no answers. Her blue eyes, now my blue eyes, were wide and lost. I saw her face, but I felt my own fear. So this is what it's like, I thought. A bitter twist to my new lips. Being her. The thought wasn't a question. It was a revelation. And in that moment, I felt a strange mix of emotions, fury at her for doing this, a profound sense of violation, and a terrifying, magnetic pull toward the woman in the mirror. She had stolen my life, but in doing so, she had given me hers. I was just beginning to understand what a complicated, confusing, and utterly transformative gift that was. My mission was simple. If not insane, get to my apartment. Lily mentioned an old book of her grandmother's. If she had used it to swap our bodies, then the book had to be the key. Maybe there was a counterspell, a way to reverse this before midnight. If she had left it at her place, I had to find it. But my gut told me she wouldn't be that careless. She'd have taken it with her to my apartment, the one place she knew I couldn't or wouldn't go. The thought of walking into my own home, in her body, to confront her, in my body, was a dizzying, head-spinning prospect, but it was the only plan I had. Stepping out of her apartment building was like stepping onto another planet. The city was the same one I'd lived in my whole life, but my experience of it changed instantly. The first thing I noticed was the sound. Her footsteps were different. I'd found a pair of simple white sneakers in her closet, but even they made a lighter, softer sound on the pavement. My whole body felt lighter, more graceful. Walking required a different kind of balance. I was acutely aware of the gentle sway of my hips, a movement that was entirely unconscious but impossible to ignore. My hair, which I had pulled back into a simple ponytail, bounced against the back of my neck with every step. The world looked at me differently, or rather, the men in it did. As a reasonably average-looking guy, I was used to being mostly invisible. People don't generally stare at you on the street unless you're on fire. But as Lily, I was a magnet for gazes. They weren't necessarily lecherous or aggressive, not at first. They were just looks. A quick up and down glance from a businessman waiting for the light. A longer, more appreciative stare from a construction worker. A lingering look from a guy my age sitting at a sidewalk cafe. Each glance was like a tiny physical poke. It made the skin on my arms tingle. My first reaction was a jolt of indignant anger. "What are you looking at?" I wanted to snarl, my default male response to feeling challenged. But the snarl wouldn't come out in this voice, and the body I was in didn't project intimidation. It projected an invitation, whether I wanted it to or not. I found myself ducking my head, pulling the V-neck of my t-shirt up a little higher. a gesture of modesty that felt both alien and instinctive. The shame was immediate. Why was I the one feeling self-conscious I hadn't done anything? But that seemed to be part of the deal. This body came with a built-in set of social rules I didn't understand. I needed caffeine and a moment to steel my nerves before heading to my place. I ducked into the first coffee shop I saw, the bell over the door jingling merrily. The air inside was warm and smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon. The barista was a young guy with a friendly smile and a man bun. "What can I get for you today?" he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Just a black coffee, please," I said. My voice came out softer than I intended. He punched it into the register. "Tough morning?" he asked, his smile widening. "You have no idea," I muttered. He laughed. "Well, a pretty smile like that shouldn't be wasted on a tough morning. This one's on me." He winked. I was completely flustered. My first instinct was to say, "I'm a dude," but I knew how insane that would sound. My cheeks flushed, a hot, prickly sensation that I could feel spreading up my neck. I couldn't stop it. This body seemed to have a direct, high-speed connection between embarrassment and blood flow. "Oh, you don't have to do that," I stammered, looking down at her sneakers. "I insist," he said, already turning to make the coffee. "Name for the order." I froze. My name was Jake, but I couldn't say that. "Lily," I said, the name feeling like a strange, bitter fruit in my mouth. "Lily," he repeated, scribbling it on the cup. "It's a beautiful name." When he handed me the coffee, his fingers brushed against mine. It was a fleeting, probably accidental touch, but it felt like a jolt of electricity. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. He just smiled, unfazed. I found a small table in the corner and sank into a chair, my hands wrapped around the warm cup. My heart was racing. What just happened? He had flirted with me. He had given me free coffee and complimented my smile. And my reaction, it wasn't what I expected. Part of me was annoyed, creeped out even, but another, much smaller and more confusing part of me was beflattered. For a moment, I had forgotten I was Jake. I was just a person being treated with a kind of gentle, appreciative charm that I had never experienced before. It was a form of power. I realized a subtle, passive power that came from being looked at, from being desired. It was nothing like the assertive, physical power I was used to. It was quieter, more manipulative, and in its own way, just as potent. I took a sip of coffee. The bitter hot liquid was a welcome shock to my system. I wasn't just playing a role, I was feeling the effects of that role. The world was treating me as Lily, and my body, my very nerves, were starting to respond as Lily. The blush, the downcast eyes, the small, flustered smile I'd given the barista in spite of myself, they were her reactions, bleeding into me. This was more dangerous than I thought. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my own identity. If I spent too long in this skin, would there be anything of Jake left, or would I just melt away, replaced by the woman whose life I was inhabiting? The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. I had to find that book. I had to get my life back, before it was too late. My apartment building looked exactly the same, but approaching it felt like preparing for a military infiltration. I buzzed the intercom for my own unit, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. After a moment, the speaker crackled. Yes, it was my voice. Hearing it from the outside, directed at me, was profoundly unsettling. "It's a Lily," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I think I left my wallet here the other day." It was a flimsy excuse, but the best I could come up with on the spot. There was a pause. I could imagine her on the other side, a smug look on my face, weighing her options. The doors open, my voice finally grunted, and the lock buzzed. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The lobby was empty. My hands were sweating as I rode the elevator up to the 4th floor. Every ding of the ascending car felt like a tick on a doomsday clock. The door to my apartment, 4B, was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and slipped inside. My sneakers silent on the hardwood floor. The place was a mess, but it was my mess. My jacket was thrown over the back of the couch. A stack of mail was piled on the kitchen counter, and the faint smell of stale pizza hung in the air. It smelled like home, and it made the fact that I was a stranger here even more painful. "Lily," my voice called out from the bedroom, Find your wallet and get out. I'm busy." "Just a second," I called back, my voice wavering. "Busy," she'd said. I knew exactly what that meant. She was on my computer, in my office, transferring my $14 million. I had to find that book, and I had to find it now. Where would she have put it? Not somewhere obvious. She was smarter than that. I scanned the living room. My gaze landed on the bookshelf, a chaotic jumble of sci-fi paperbacks and old college textbooks. It was too predictable. I tiptoed toward my bedroom. The door was closed. I could hear the faint rhythmic tapping of my own fingers on my keyboard. She was in there, stealing my future. I had to think like her. Where would she hide something she considered precious but also dangerous? Something she wanted to keep close, but out of sight. My eyes darted around the living room again. My gaze fell on the large, worn leather suitcase I kept under my coffee table, filled with old photo albums and keepsakes from my childhood. It was a stupid, sentimental place. A place a guy like me would never think to look for something sinister. It was perfect. I knelt down, the tight jeans protesting the movement. I slid the heavy suitcase out. My hands trembled as I undid the brass latches. They popped open with a soft snick. Lifting the lid, I saw the familiar clutter of my past, my first baseball glove, a stack of faded photographs from family vacations, my high school diploma, and there, nestled between a photo album and a bundle of old letters, was a book. It didn't look like much. It was bound in dark, cracked leather, with no title on the cover. It was about the size of a thick novel. I lifted it out. It was heavier than it looked. I opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed and brittle, covered in an elegant, spidery script that I recognized as Latin. In the margins, however, were notes written in a more modern hand, Lily's handwriting. She had been studying this, translating it. My fingers, her fingers, flipped through the pages. I saw diagrams of celestial alignments, lists of strange ingredients, and passages of text that made my head spin. And then I found it, a page titled De Translatio Corporis, the translation of the body. The incantation itself was a long, complex string of Latin words, but it was the notes Lily had scrawled at the bottom of the page that made my blood run cold. There were 2 key annotations. The first read effect is temporary. Reversion occurs at the stroke of midnight on the day of the casting. Souls return to their natural vessels. A wave of relief washed over me. It was true. It would end. I just had to wait it out. But then I read the second note, which she had underlined twice. Note, if the incantation is spoken again by one of the subjects before the midnight reversion, the soul's new vessel becomes its permanent anchor. The change is irreversible. The displaced soul is cast out. I read it again, and a third time. The words swam before my eyes. Permanent, irreversible. She hadn't just planned to steal my money. She had a contingency plan. If she couldn't get the money transferred in time, or if something went wrong, she could use this. She could stay as me, and I would be, what, cast out? Would I just cease to exist? The thought was a black hole of terror opening up in my chest. But then another thought, a darker and more seductive one, slithered into my mind. If the incantation is spoken again by one of the subjects, that meant me, too. I held the power to make this permanent, for myself. I could stay like this. I could be Lily. And the $14 million she was currently transferring into Lily's bank account would be mine. I would have the money, the life, and this beautiful, powerful new body. She had tried to destroy me, to take everything from me, but she had made one critical mistake. She had left the weapon behind. I looked down at the book in my hands. It felt like it was humming with a dark energy. Then I looked at my hands, themselves slender, graceful. A woman's hands. I thought of the barista's smile, the way my hair felt against my neck, the strange, intoxicating power of a passing glance. My life as Jake had been fine. I had a dead-end job, a crappy apartment, and a string of failed relationships. The lottery was supposed to be my ticket out. Lily had tried to steal that ticket. But maybe she hadn't stolen it. Maybe she had just changed the destination. Find what you were looking for. I jumped. Slamming the book shut, Lily in my body was standing in the doorway of the bedroom, my body, my height, my broad shoulders, my 5 o'clock shadow already starting to show. Seeing it move with her mannerisms, a slight feline tilt of the head, was grotesque. "I was just leaving," I said, my voice tight. I clutched the book to my chest. My eyes narrowed, focusing on the book. A flicker of panic crossed my face. "What is that?" he demanded. "Just an old photo album," I lied, my heart hammering. She took a step forward. "Give it to me, Lily." The name sounded like a curse coming from my own mouth. I backed away. "No." Revenge. The thought was as clear and sharp as a shard of glass. She stole my life. But maybe I could just steal hers right back, and do a much better job with it. "I have to go," I said. Turning and bolting for the door, I could hear my own heavy footsteps pounding on the floor behind me as she gave chase. But I was lighter, faster. I yanked the door open and scrambled out into the hallway, not stopping until I was out of the building and lost in the anonymity of the crowded city streets. The ancient leather-bound book held tight against my chest like a shield. The hours leading up to midnight were the longest of my life. I spent them in a cheap motel room on the other side of town, the kind of place that smells of stale cigarettes and desperation. I had paid in cash, using the $100 I'd found in the pocket of one of Lily's jackets. The room was grim, with a lumpy bed, a flickering fluorescent light in the bathroom, and a television that only got 3 channels. But it was anonymous. It was safe. The spell book lay open on the rickety table beside the bed. I had read the passage over and over again, my lips forming the strange Latin words until they felt less foreign. My mind was a battlefield. Every instinct screamed that this was insane, a perversion of nature. I was Jake. I was a man. To choose this, to willingly trap myself in this form, felt like a kind of suicide. But what was I going back to? A life of mediocrity? Now without the fortune that had promised to change it, I would be Jake, the guy who won the lottery and had it all stolen by his crazy ex-girlfriend. I'd be a cautionary tale, a punchline, humiliated and broke. Then I would look in the grimy motel mirror, even in the harsh, unflattering light. The reflection was compelling. Lily's face was pale with exhaustion, her blue eyes wide with a mixture of fear and resolve. It was a beautiful face, a face that people noticed, a face that people were kind to. I thought about the future. As Lily, with $14 million, the world was my oyster. I could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone. I could buy a villa in Italy, study art in Paris, start a charity. The possibilities were endless. As Jake, I'd be lucky to get my old job back, fielding angry customer service calls for $80 a day. The choice was a brutal one: identity or freedom, my past or her future. The minutes ticked by. 11:40, 11:45, 11:50. My phone, Lily's phone, started ringing. I looked at the screen. It was my number. It was her, calling from my body. She must have realized I had the book. She must have known what I was considering. I let it ring and ring and ring. At 11:55, I stood up. My reflection stood with me. I took a deep breath, the air filling my smaller lungs. This was it. There was no going back. I placed my hand on the open page of the book. The parchment felt cool and dry beneath my palm. My voice, when I began to speak, was a quiet, trembling whisper, but it grew stronger with each word, each syllable echoing in the small, silent room. Anima muto, corpus novo, sigillum pono. I didn't understand the words. Not really, but I felt them. It was like a low hum starting deep in my chest, a vibration that spread through my entire body. The air in the room grew thick and heavy, charged with an unseen energy. A faint ethereal blue light began to glow from the pages of the book, casting flickering shadows on the walls. My body trembled, not from fear anymore, but from the raw power coursing through me. I felt a profound fundamental shift, like a key turning in a lock deep within my soul. It was a feeling of settling, of clicking into place. The spell wasn't just a mask I was wearing. It was becoming my skin. My soul was being woven into the very fabric of this body. The threads pulled tight, the knot tied for eternity. I finished the last word of the incantation, my voice clear and steady. In eternum, forever. The blue light flared, blindingly bright for a second, and then vanished. The room was plunged back into its dingy, yellow gloom, the humming stopped, the air returned to normal. Silence. I stood there, my hand still on the book, my heart pounding. I felt the same. I was still in Lily's body. I looked at the cheap digital clock on the bedside table. 11:59. The final minute ticked by in agonizing slowness. I watched the numbers, my breath hitched in my throat. And then, it happened. The numbers flipped. 12 hours. I waited. I braced myself for the wrenching, tearing sensation of my soul being ripped from this body and thrown back into my old one. Nothing happened. I was still here, still in the motel room, still in her body. I lifted my hand. It was still slender, pale, and feminine. I touched my face. Still soft. I took a breath. Still light. A slow smile spread across my new lips. It worked. I imagined Lily, wherever she was, probably in my apartment, staring at my bank account, a triumphant smirk on my face. I imagined her waiting for the stroke of midnight, waiting for the magic to reverse so she could enjoy her stolen fortune. I imagined the look of dawning horror as she realized that nothing was happening, that she was trapped in the body of the man she had just robbed, with no money, no power, and no way back. She had played a dangerous game, and she had lost. I had won. I walked over to the mirror and looked at myself. The woman staring back at me was no longer a stranger. The fear and confusion were gone from her eyes, replaced by a cool, quiet confidence. This wasn't Lily's face anymore. It was mine. 1 month can change everything. I learned that a month ago, when I woke up as someone else, and I learned it again over the next 30 days, as I shed the last remnants of Jake and fully, completely, became Lily. The first thing I did was leave the country. There was nothing left for me in New York. I took the $14 million and disappeared. I bought a one-way, first-class ticket to Rome under my new legal name, Lily Myers. The name felt strange for the first week, but now, saying it feels as natural as breathing. I ended up in a small sun-drenched town on the Amalfi Coast. My apartment is carved into the side of a cliff, with a wide terrace that overlooks the impossible blue of the Mediterranean Sea. The air here smells of salt, lemon groves, and jasmine. Every morning, I wake up not to the sound of sirens, but to the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Life is simple and beautiful. I spend my days exploring winding cobblestone streets, learning broken Italian from a cheerful old woman who sells fresh bread, and reading novels on my sun lounger. I've learned to cook. I've learned to appreciate the taste of good wine. I've learned to move in this body with an easy grace that is no longer forced. The gentle sway of my hips when I walk is just the way I walk now. The way my hair catches the sea breeze is just a part of my day. I've started dating. His name is Marco. He's a photographer with kind eyes and a laugh that makes me laugh, too. He thinks I'm a mysterious American woman who came to Italy to escape a broken heart. He isn't entirely wrong. He loves to take pictures of me. He says the camera loves my smile. At first, it made me uncomfortable, but now, I just smile for him. It's easy. It feels good to be seen. Sometimes, late at night, when the moon is a silver coin on the black water, I sit in front of the mirror on my vanity. I brush out my long blonde hair, the same way I did that first, terrifying morning. But it's different now. There's no panic, no confusion. I look at the reflection, at the heart-shaped face and the wide blue eyes, and I see myself. It's a strange thing to admit, even to myself. But I am happier now than I have ever been in my life. I feel more alive, more vibrant, more me. Funny, I started this as revenge, a desperate act to reclaim what was stolen from me. Now I think this is who I was meant to be all along. Maybe the lottery wasn't the money. Maybe the lottery was this, a chance to start over, completely. Tonight, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, with a country code I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice soft. There was a moment of silence on the other end, just the sound of ragged breathing. Then, a voice spoke, and a ghost from a past life walked into my perfect Italian evening. It was a man's voice, hoarse, bitter, and filled with a rage that had long since curdled into despair. It was the voice that used to be mine. "You ruined my life." He didn't say his name. He didn't have to. I knew who it was, the soul of Lily, trapped in the cage of my old body, living my old, broke, miserable life. I felt a flicker of something pity, maybe, but it was quickly extinguished by a quiet sense of peace, justice. I walked out onto my terrace. The night air was warm, and the moon cast a glittering path across the water. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the door. The woman there looked calm, serene, free. I smiled, a small genuine smile. "No, Jake," I replied, my voice a soft murmur carried on the breeze. "You just gave me mine." I ended the call before he could respond. I tossed the phone onto a cushioned chair and leaned against the railing, breathing in the sweet, salty air of my new home, my new life. The past was a ghost, a story that belonged to someone else now. My story was just beginning, and for the first time, I felt completely, utterly, and perfectly whole.